Greetings viewers, welcome back to the channel. In today's video we have another tool video, another Milwaukee tool video. Checked out the new high-speed M12 ratchets. I've got the 3/8 and the 1/4 inch drive. Been using them for a month or so now. They've been out for several months, so they're not exactly new, but they are a newer release. And I know in past videos, a lot of you guys said, stop unboxing them brand new and tell us how great they are. Use the thing and then tell us what you think of it after you've used it. So that's what I've done in this case. I've used it for a month or so. I'll put in some clips now of you seeing me use it on my brother's CVT service. I used it on the pulling of his engine and replacing the torque converter and several other jobs that weren't actually put on video. So we're going to look closer at these two ratchets, look at features and specifications, go out and use them on some real-world applications, and let you get a little bit better feel if it's something you'd like to add to your Milwaukee collection or if it's something you'd like to use to jump into the M12 Milwaukee platform. We talked about the M12 fuel ratchet, the original. I've got that. I wasn't a big fan of that, but these ratchets, the changes Milwaukee made to these ratchets have really won me over a lot of the things I didn't like about the original ratchet. We're also going to get that ratchet out and compare and contrast it to these new high-speed models. That said, let's go ahead and get into the video. So we've got our 3/8 high-speed fuel ratchet here. Part number is 2567. This is a -20, which is a tool only. And we've got the 1/4 inch ratchet, which is the 2566. And this is a -22 because it's a kit with two 2.0 batteries and a tool bag and charger. So we've got all three ratchets on screen now. We've got the Generation 1. It's not really Gen 1 and Gen 2. It's just the original fuel brushless and the high-speed fuel brushless. It's not really 1 and 2 kind of generational thing. These are two different tools with two different reasons for existing. This is a low RPM, high torque ratchet. This is a low torque, high RPM ratchet. 200 RPMs here, and I believe 60 foot-pounds of torque. I'm going off memory here, guys, so if I'm getting it wrong, I'll correct it on the screen. This model is 450 RPM, and I believe 35 foot-pounds of torque. Both the 3/8 and the 1/4 inch have the exact same specifications for RPM and torque. The only real difference is the drive size. As you'll see, I've got the protective boot, which is an option on the 1/4 inch. I don't on the 3/8, and I do on the 3/8 original fuel. And the part number for the boot accessory, all those that might be curious, is 49-16-2567. So let's set the 1/4 inch to the side for right now, and we'll focus mainly on the two 3/8 inch ratchets and look at the comparison of what's changed between these two models. So first off, the high-speed ratchet is slightly shorter top to bottom with battery than the new high-speed. The biggest improvement between these ratchets is without a doubt the speed. That was one issue I had with this being so slow and why I stuck with my snap-on ratchets, because they were much higher RPM, about 300 350 RPM compared to this one at 200. Now this one's got 450, it blows this one out of the water. And here's a quick speed comparison for you guys. 200 RPM there versus 450. Just thing smokes it for speed. The thickness of the head, you can see very clearly. I know it's a little bit exaggerated because there's a boot on this one and there's not a boot on this one. Really quickly for that comparison, we'll put the boot. They use the same boot, so the outside dimensions of the head are the same size, but you can see it's nearly half the thickness of the old fuel ratchet. And when we look at it this way, it's way smaller, way more compact width-wise as well. That was one big issue I had with the original fuel ratchet, was how big and bulky it was, and why I preferred my 14.4 snap-on, because of the size of the head as the biggest contributor. The second thing I really didn't like was the paddle shift, or the paddle switch rather than a button, but they have retained the paddle switch. My main gripe with it is that it's just easy to snag it on stuff if you're in an engine bay. If you get around the wiring harness, you can snag that on it. People that don't like the paddle All you got to do though is knock the roll pin out down here. You can pull the paddle off and just use the button. It'd be nice if Milwaukee offered an optional snap-on cover to snap onto that little trigger right there to make just a nice little round button with maybe like some kind of a bellow around it to keep debris out of there. For those users that don't like the pedal switch. Milwaukee, there's your idea. If you decide to go ahead and put that in production, don't forget me on the royalties. Or any of you guys that are into 3D printing, maybe that's something to look into. So other than that, there's not too many differences in them. They did change the location of the battery charge indicator. On the original fuel, it was down here on the side. On the new high speed, it's here on the back where it's more in your face when you're using it. Whereas this one was covered up by your palm or your thumb, usually in use. So nice that they changed the position of that. Another feature that a lot of people had concern with or was aggravating was the selector switch, the reversing switch, as it was flush mounted on the head. That made it a little bit hard to grab it, especially if you had gloves on, but when you put the boot on, it actually recesses it and makes it even harder to get in there and change it. So another optional accessory they have for both the 3/8 and the 1/4" drive version of this ratchet is a tall shift knob assembly. This one's 3/8" drive. It's part number 41-06-256, and I actually have it installed on this 3/8 now. I just picked it up. That's why it's nice and shiny and clean and doesn't have any marks from tool use. To just show you the difference of how it is raised, and it just makes it a little bit easier to switch it, a little bit more meat to grab onto with your fingers. And we've got the regular one here that's flush mounted on the 1/4", and as you see with the boot, it is recessed, so not quite as much to grab a hold of. You might find yourself grabbing a pair of pliers or something to change directions. It's a little bit more aggravating for guys with bigger hands or guys that like to wear gloves, especially like mechanics gloves. So that's the main differences in the two. No faults or issues out of this ratchet in the last month and a half I've been using it. I have not charged this battery one time other than the first time I charged it out of the box. Put it in this ratchet. I did the valve body replacement. I did the torque converter replacement. And I did a little bit of work on the 2008 Forester of my cousin's with this ratchet. And as you see, I still got 2 bars on a CP 2.0 M12 battery. So the battery life is really good on it. Normally on these, I run a 3.0 CP battery just because the smaller form factor and the 1 extra amp hour of power, runtime, and a little bit better cell in it. So that's the main differences there. So let's take a little bit better look at the speed difference between these two ratchets, as that's probably one of the major factors in upgrading or adding the high speed to your arsenal. So we've got a 10 mil socket on here, and we've got the Gen 1 fuel ratchet. We're just gonna run up the fender here and knock some of these bolts loose. And tighten them back down. And we'll do the same with the high speed. As you see, humongous difference in the two ratchets. You really do have to watch yourself with this thing because those high RPMs, on smaller fasteners like that, you can definitely shear them off, not from the torque, but from the sheer speed when you come to an abrupt stop. That's compared there to the old fuel. So the speed difference might not seem like a big thing to a lot of people, but we're using very short bolts on that first example. It really comes to shine when you're using it on longer bolts, longer nuts on threaded rod. So let's show you a little bit of a different take on it as we run these nuts off of these longer studs on this strut. And 3, 2, 1, go. Humongous difference there, head to head, running that 12 mil nut off of the strut mount. And run them back down. We'll switch hands. We'll put the high speed at the back and the Gen 1 fuel, or the first version fuel, up here at the front. And 3, 2, 1, go. Oh, that thing's violent when it hits. So, as you can see, if you're working with a lot of stuff where you have longer studs, longer bolts, the high speed really saves you time. And in this industry, time is money, so anything you can do to make yourself work faster and more efficient, the better. A lot of people might be turned off by the fact that the high speed offers much less torque, only 35 foot-pounds compared to the 60 in the normal fuel. Well, I don't understand. I never understood when I was a Snap-on tool dealer. I don't understand now, reading comments on tools, why people care about having so much torque in a cordless ratchet. A cordless ratchet's job is to do exactly what you saw, run nuts in and out on threaded studs or run bolts in and out. Final torquing is being done with a torque wrench anyway. And if you're breaking it loose, use a breaker bar or manually break it loose with the ratchet. They're rated for quite a bit of force, but that's what a ratchet's for. Even with an air ratchet, I know the Snap-on FAR 72C had 70 foot-pounds of torque. There's a lot of instances where people had to manually break it loose, pulling on the ratchet before they hit the button for the pneumatic motor to run and run the fastener in or out. So I don't know what the big deal is. If you want this to have more power, if you want this to do, say what an impact does, that's where the right angle impact comes into play. These are ratchets. There's just a motor with a straight drive to a pinion to turn the anvil and turn the socket. There is no impacting mechanism, there is no hammers, there is no anvil to beat against. So they're not going to have a ton of power. But the fact of that lets you have these small compact heads, because all you're doing is taking a drive shaft and turning it 90 degrees to spin a fastener. And if you have a right angle impact, like the M12 right angle impact, you get this gigantic massive head, because you have to have hammers and an anvil in here for the impacting force. And a lot of places you can't get that into. So really quickly you can see just how big of a difference it is between something that's got a lot of torque and something that has little torque. But this is still very handy, whether it has 10 foot-pounds of torque or 50 foot-pounds of torque. You know, 35 is very usable, and you can break off plenty of bolts with that amount of power. I've done it. If you're not careful, 12 millimeter, 10 millimeter headed bolts and smaller, you can wring them right off with only 30, 35 foot-pounds of torque. It's very easy to do if you don't control the speed and get the right feel for things. So I know a lot of you might be wondering about pricing. Pricing on these bare tools are $179, and the kit is $259 with two 2-amp-hour batteries, a charger, and a tool bag. And that's my review of the M12 high-speed ratchets. Really enjoy them so far. No real complaints other than that paddle switch, but that's just my personal preference. Talked about the good, the bad. We've seen it compared to the old model. We've seen it compared to the right angle impact in a lesser degree. Whether it is worth upgrading, adding to your tool arsenal, that decision is for you to make. I just present you the information and let you go off of that. Hopefully you found this video useful and informative in a buying decision if you're looking at buying one of these high-speed ratchets. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.